From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Manveen Rana. It's the Tory party conference this week, which should be the time for a serious discussion about the state of the party. Instead, it's full of moments a bit like this. Okay. There's a sudden rush down the stairs. Lots of photographers have got ready, so it looks like the leadership candidates are making their way in to the first hustings. Well, here we have Robert Jenrick coming along. He's doing rather well at the moment. How's your campaign going?
I'm just going to an event, but it's going really well. Nice to see you.
So far, the leadership contest has lurched between applause and cheering in the conference hall to a succession of gaffes and controversy as the four candidates battle it out to set the future direction of the Conservative Party. Should the Tories lurch further to the right or make a bid for the centre ground? Behind the scenes, the knives are out, with briefings and counter-briefings from the campaign teams. In his only appearance at conference, the current leader, Rishi Sunak, tried to call for unity.
Whoever wins this contest, give them your backing. We must end the division, the backbiting, the squabbling.
Today, all four leadership hopefuls will take to the conference stage and deliver their big pitch to the members. But they won't just be fighting for the leadership. This is a battle for the soul of the party. The story today: the Tory Hunger Games. I'm here in Birmingham, in the maze that is the International Conference Centre, and from the moment you walk in, it's obvious what this conference is about. Looming large over the conference hall are four huge banners with the faces of each of the leadership candidates emblazoned across them. But nobody's really talking about what went wrong for the Tories at the election. This conference is all about the race to be the next leader. In the running are four candidates who represent different sections of the party. Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch from the right wing, James Cleverly, who hovers somewhere in the middle, and Tom Tugendhat, who's seen as a one-nation centrist. As conference began, Robert Jenrick was the front-runner, winning the support of 33 MPs, whilst Kemi Badenoch came second with 28. And Jenrick, the former immigration minister, seems to have made quite an impression here on some of the grassroots members.
I've been a bit of a Robert Jenrick fan for since he started speaking, etc. So, we shall see. But it's all to play for. All to play for.
I haven't made my mind up yet, but I was very impressed with Robert Jenrick and his strength.
Oh, you're wearing a Robert Jenrick tag?
Yes, yeah, Robert Jenrick, all the way.
Why?
I like his social policies. As someone who's young and left school at 15 and isn't like a massively intellectual person, I'm not going to try and float my own boat. Something that I understand and care about a lot is social policies. And I think that we need to have some more right-wing policies.
Many of the members here are still making up their minds. Some are applauding Jenrick's tough stance on immigration, while others are alarmed to see that his campaign material has been published in the Reform Party's shade of teal blue, which they say is a step too far. And there are others who aren't convinced by Jenrick's right-wing credentials at all, pointing out that he used to be a moderate.
ABJ, anybody besides Jenrick.
Why do you hate Robert Jenrick so much?
He's fake, he's like Boris, he's like Liz Truss. We've had enough of that crap. Where they're left they become right to win the leadership. No thanks, I want natural. So natural is either cleverly or Kemi, but definitely not Jenrick. I just don't trust the guy.
As the front runner, Robert Jenrick has the most to lose here, and he's been keen to avoid any unscheduled, unscripted moments. When I spotted him, he was surrounded by a group of fresh-faced aides, charging him across the hall.
I'm sorry.
Robert, how did that go?
Hi, how are you? It went very well as far as I'm concerned, but you better ask the members.
Conference, you win the argument?
It's going well, but it's a real pleasure to be here.
Robert, I tried to grab a proper word with Robert Jenrick there as he left his hustings, but he ran off, avoiding the media, and the entire media scrum ran after him along the conference hall, and his people basically pushed all of us out of the way because they're desperate for him not to talk. He doesn't want to take any risks. But that hasn't stopped him making a gaffe. In a video his campaign released to explain why he wants to leave the European Court for Human Rights, he somehow managed to slander British troops.
Our special forces are killing rather than capturing terrorists because our lawyers tell us that if they're caught, the European Court will set them free. The court is telling the Swiss...
It led to a flurry of difficult interviews, and it raised eyebrows in the party, especially from ex-military man and leadership rival Tom Tugendhat.
What he said is wrong, and I'm afraid demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of military operations and the law of armed conflict. I'm extremely concerned that such words should not be seen in any way to encourage people to take any action other than to surrender to British forces when asked to do so.
Tom Tugendhat, who regularly reminds people of his military service, is here chasing the centre-right vote. And although he's trailing in the polls, he's definitely making his presence felt at the party conference. Right, there's another little flurry down the stairs. Here comes Tom Tugendhat. He's rushing in. He's got an entourage around him, wearing caps saying Tom Tugendhat. Tom, how's the campaign going?
It's going very well, and it's really good fun, actually. It's nice to be meeting so many members and activists who, have got the right vision for the future of the party and the country. So it's great to be with them.
He may not agree with his rivals, but he was keen to put up a unified front.
I'd love to have all of them working in my cabinet.
And with that, he was off again. The Tugendhat campaign is the most noticeable here. There are lollipops and sweets with his face on them, and his supporters are even sporting temporary tattoos. But he's joint bottom in the polls, and he hasn't impressed everyone here.
Tom Tugendhat, no.
Oh, why?
I think there's a sort of hint of underlying arrogance about Tom Tugendhat, actually. And I'm not sure he's got the intellect. I think Robert Jenrick has, because that's really important. And I think Robert Jenrick's sort of got a bit of charisma, actually, which I hadn't spotted before, but I think it really came across.
So the conference hall is definitely filling up. There's a long, snaking queue of people trying to get in to the Rishi Sunak event. Does seem to be the only one he's at, so I guess this is their only opportunity. We're outside a counter event at the same time, Brave, which is a Tom Tugendhat reception for Conservative Home. It's a much smaller room and it's completely rammed. There's a queue of people waiting to get in outside. We can see them holding wine glasses that say Tugendhats. There are a lot of Tugendtotes around and a lot of pictures of the man himself inside.
We can win the next general election. Everybody, I give you Tom.
Just being introduced, here he comes.
We need to choose leadership, we need to choose service, and we need to choose to act on Conservative principles. That's why I'm standing to be your leader. That's why I know we can win the next general election. And that's why we are going to create the next Conservative government together. Thank you.
Outside the drinks, I ran into Lord Ashcroft, whose blog, Conservative Home, was hosting the event. He's a man who has a lot of influence over the party, a prolific donor and pollster who's even served as deputy chairman.
I haven't got a particular candidate that I am supporting. I just hope that whoever is appointed, that they will actually work with each other, and the undermining which we saw over the last few years will go, and there won't be jockeying around to try to become leader. And every one of them should and needs to be in the shadow cabinet, and I hope that whoever does win, that they will put their support behind it, be a little bit less grumpy about having lost the election.
There's a lot of chatter here about the party needing to move further to the right, needing to meet reform where it's winning votes. What do you think it needs to do in order to win the next election?
Well, they've got to try and recreate the coalition of voters that enable Boris to win the way he did in 2019. And that is not only to appeal to your core voters, but you've also got to appeal to a certain number of Labour voters and Liberal Democrat voters as well. But at the same time, you must determine what is the centre of gravity of the silent majority of the nation and not always follow the centre of gravity of the raucous minority. And every candidate needs to find that centre of gravity on every issue and then determine whether that issue to that centre of gravity is something which he in all his conscience can either support, or if he doesn't support it, to adequately explain why he cannot support that. So there's a matter of integrity in here. I often say of politicians, do you want power without principles, or do you want principles without power? And that's always an interesting question. You rarely get an honest answer, or they try to adapt the sentences. But if they had to choose with a gun at their head, what would a politician choose? And I'll leave it for you to work out what a successful politician would choose.
This conference is the best opportunity to meet the grassroots members who'll be voting for the next leader. And one candidate who's taking full advantage of the opportunity is James Cleverly, the former Foreign Secretary. There is some criticism here that no one really knows what he stands for, but he's making up for the lack of headlines by being the candidate who's always walking the floor, shaking hands, taking selfies, getting to know the members. He's always hand in hand with his wife. I managed to chase them both down a corridor. James, how's the campaign going?
It's going well, I think. It's going well. It's look, this is party conference. I've always loved party conference. This is where you meet the members, meet the family, the Conservative family, get grilled by you lot. I've always been comfortable doing both. So I'm in my element, loving it.
Would you be happy to work in a cabinet with any of the other candidates?
Look, these are my friends. I know it's lovely to try and create these stories about division. These are my friends as well as my colleagues. It's a really, really talented bunch. And I look at the Conservatives here today at every level and compare them with the shambles of what we saw in the Labour conference, and it puts me in really good spirits.
People are saying this is a battle for the soul of the party, though. Which way would you like it to go? Would you like it to go further to the right, to outdo reform, or are you a centrist at heart?
Those completely artificial and nonsensical divisions, that's not how I think. What this is about maximising our appeal. This is about winning back voters from Reform and the Lib Dems and Labour and people that stayed at home. It's about being a bigger party. That is what I've always believed in. That is what I'm going to pursue. And that's what I'm going to do as leader.
The real story at this conference is Kemi Badenoch. For years now, she's been talked about as the future of the party. There are a surprising number of young people here for a Tory party conference, and they tend to cluster around the Kemi stand.
I'm 20.
19.
I'm 20.
21.
19.
You're very excited about the future of the party. They have just lost an election pretty spectacularly. What makes you feel like this is where the momentum is? Because that seems quite surprising.
I think this is probably the greatest opportunity we've had as a party to really reevaluate our ideology and rebuild it for this new century.
I'm looking forward to this next leadership campaign. I really want to look towards candidates like Jenrick or Badenoch who align with me economically. It's very rare that you have a politician that will stand up and defend principles like capitalism, and it's very inspiring, it's very exciting to hear Kemi defend it very publicly.
Yeah, I'm Team Kemi.
Why?
I like her views, I like her stance on immigration, I like her stance on the economy. I think she actually sticks up for the working people, which is very important for the Conservative Party to stick up for them and not just be for the elite.
But conference kicked off badly for her after an interview she did on Times Radio on Sunday morning.
Do you think we've got the right level of maternity pay at the moment?
So maternity pay varies depending on who you work for, but it is a function, where it's statutory maternity pay, it is a function of tax. Tax comes from people who are working. We're taking from one group of people and giving to another. This, in my view, is excessive. Businesses...
Kemi Badenoch's campaign backtracked in a statement and even blamed Robert Jenrick's team for misrepresenting her. There are a lot of rumours here at conference about the Jenrick campaign using the dark arts against Badenoch, but one former MP told me that Kemi was blaming Robert Jenrick for everything, and she'd allowed him to live in her head rent-free. In the meantime, her comments on maternity pay caused such a controversy that they've hijacked the news agenda for the rest of conference.
In the past 24 hours, you've had to issue a tweet, a video, an interview with Sky News to explain what you meant on Times Radio. And all the critics are going to be hearing is you're a Tory who wants to cut maternity pay. Are you?
No, I think maternity pay is quite important. And this was actually a long discussion we were having about the role of the state in deciding what businesses should do. But let's take a step back.
There were huge queues outside the hall to hear the straight-talking former Trade Secretary and former Women's Minister defend her stance on maternity pay.
When you are a leader, when you are a Conservative, when you are making the argument for Conservative principles, your opponents are going to try and turn it into something else. We need to decide who's going to be leader of the party. Not the left, not the Guardian, not the BBC, just Conservatives.
Her confidence performance has certainly won round some of the members, but some of the party grandees here were unimpressed when she pulled out of a hustings at the last minute, and it didn't go down very well with the grassroots either. No Kemi Badenoch?
No, it was a bit of a surprise, but I think she's obviously got other things to think about at the moment, so we'll see.
Were people disappointed that she didn't?
I think, people would have liked to have heard from her, but she hasn't been as visible as some of the other candidates, so we'll see.
When she did emerge, her campaign was keen to keep her away from reporters. So Kemi Badenoch has just left the event she's done. There was a huge number of people in there. Now, she hasn't been around much over the last couple of days, so the media, there's a bit of a scrum. Everyone's trying to get a word. Kemi, are there dirty tricks being used in the campaign?
Wow, and getting pictures. This is why
Kemi, there's a whole formation around her. You can't get anywhere near her. Got a group of people arranged to meet her, greet her with cheers and applause. She's keen to be among them. She's not so keen to be among the journalists. Her team were desperate to whisk her away. Just run into a conference regular, our very own Aubrey Allegretti, chief political correspondent. Aubrey, how's it going? How weird is this conference? You go to a lot of them.
It's probably the strangest of the three, because we started with the Liberal Democrats, which was completely jubilant. Then we got to the Labour Party, which was quite staid. The message seemed to be, don't smile too much, don't look too happy, change won't come too quickly. And here we've got a Conservative conference where I think the expectation was that it would be quite funereal. And I wouldn't say that the conference atmosphere is electric or exciting, but it's certainly not as bad as people expected.
A lot of the big beasts, people like Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, no sign of them here. It's just a big leadership contest.
It certainly is, and actually there's a lot of former MPs sort of wandering around. Some of them have even rather tragically got former Member of Parliament on their badges instead of Conservative member, and all leadership candidates have a stand to be able to sort of attract members, give out merch. James cleverly did Bevs with Clevs on the first night. That was drinks with supporters in the main conference hotel bar.
You wouldn't think anyone would want to be reminded of Fizz with Liz?
No, well, I mean, we've had them all now. Fizz with Liz, Schnapps with Shaps, and now Bev's with Clev's. So it's the way to go to make a name for yourself.
What did each of the candidates have to prove? What do they need? How do they need to use conference to their advantage?
So Kemi Badenoch is probably the person who's got the most to prove at this conference, because she was the presumed front runner. It was sort of accepted that she, for the last few years, would be the person who would gain the mantle from Rishi Sunak and take over as Tory leader. But so far, she has been in second place in the votes amongst the parliamentary party. And so she has to prove that she is worth keeping in this race.
In a week's time, MPs will vote to narrow down the field to just the top two, and then it goes out to the grassroots, and all the polling there suggests that Kemi Badenoch would come out on top. So the Robert Jenrick team will be hoping that she doesn't make it to the second round.
There are concerns amongst the team that there will be a Stop Kemi campaign to try and get James Cleverly or Tom Tugendhat just squeaking ahead of her in terms of the parliamentary votes that are happening on the 9th and the 10th of October. And so basically what she's got to prove is she's good enough to make it to the final two and get enough members to say that they want her on the ballot paper to vote for her.
You mentioned the Stop Kemi campaign. Everyone we talk to is being very polite and saying nice things about their rivals, but that's not what's happening behind the scenes. Just give us a sense of how messy this campaign is getting, how fractious, how divided.
So certainly compared to the 2022 leadership contest, this hasn't quite been as gloves off, because the Conservatives instituted this yellow card system. So they're effectively trying to call out and punish anyone who, on the record, knowingly briefs against another candidate. But that isn't obviously stopping them from saying everything off the record. There have been briefings about candidates being missing in action, popping into events only to leave 5 minutes later, not turning up to hustings. That's all being noticed by some of the sort of senior people here who are running the receptions. I've heard from one Tom Tugendhat ally who asked, how can anyone think that Kemi Badenoch is a credible candidate after her comments about maternity pay? They said neither her nor Jenrick represent what we need. They are both petroleum for the bin fire that is our reputation. And another source close to Tom Tugendhat said, I thought we were the party of aspiration, didn't realise we no longer support women who want to have a career, after Kemi Badenoch's comments about maternity pay. So that is a picture of what's going on behind the scene. And certainly those close to Rob Jenrick also think that they should have exploited this more. They thought it was a rare moment where she made a, they say, policy misstep, and they could attack her and criticise her based on comments she'd made, not about her personality.
Yeah, they really aren't holding back. There have been rumours here that Robert Jenrick's campaign team are doing a lot of briefing against Kemi Badenoch. What are you hearing?
Well, I mean, I think it's certainly true to say that they see her as their main rival. And so, yeah, there are certainly lots of Kemi supporters who are throwing accusations at Robert Jenrick's and vice versa. But ultimately, the conference has been relatively good-natured so far. I think some of the dividing lines we're seeing are really emerging around whether or not the party should ape reform or whether it should sort of distance itself from it as much as possible. And that question about whether or not the Conservatives were too right-wing or not right-wing enough is dominating this conference. You've got Robert Jenrick saying that under him the Conservatives should wear reforms clothes, and then people like the leading One Nation MP and Shadow Minister Alicia Kearns saying that the party can't afford to become reform light. So that question is very much yet to be settled.
Aubrey, when in the past, when there has been a leadership campaign at the same time as conference, we saw it when David Cameron beat David Davis. It can be the moment that really makes or breaks a candidate. That's what happened. The favourite was David Davis. Cameron came out the winner. Who are the winners and who are the losers with this one?
So it's a bit too early to sort of say overall, but Kemi Badenoch's comments about maternity pay, however they were interpreted, her reaction to it, I don't think has helped the situation. She's saying that she was in the middle of answering a question and she was interrupted, and that's why she said what she said. But I think ultimately people will say, well, if you want to be the next leader of the Conservative Party or the next Prime Minister, then you're going to have to watch exactly what you're saying. And if a journalist asks you another question in the middle of answering another one, then respond to the question that's been asked of you. Don't carry on and risk that misinterpretation. She obviously has to prove that she can make it through to the final two. And so far, I'm not hearing very many people saying that they're convinced that so far she can.
This feels like a very odd conference. There aren't many of the big beasts of the party here. You know, Rishi Sunak arrived for one event right at the start and then promptly disappeared. Jeremy Hunt is around, but he's keeping a low profile, while the Boris Johnsons and Priti Patels and Suella Bravermans haven't even turned up. One former Prime Minister who did raise some eyebrows by doing an event here is Liz Truss. We're recording. Liz, are you proof that these leadership battles don't always work out very well?
Contributed to that.
Liz, are you proof that these when the party votes for a leader, it often turns out really badly?
Excuse me. I have to design these pensions.
I don't think she's going to comment. So that was a classic conference moment. We spotted some cameras gathering around one of the doors, and that usually means there's somebody about to come out. And very quickly, that crowd grew. There was suddenly a huge scrum of cameras and reporters, photographers, all on the one corridor, and that's been quite rare at this conference. So we thought we'd better go and join them. It turns out they were waiting for Liz Truss to come out of her event. And she is, even though she's not running for leader, obviously, and nobody here would say she's the future of the party, she is the one everybody wants to have a word with. I tried to grab a really quick word. I'm not sure she was very keen. She didn't say very much in return. And I'm not sure I really helped her view of journalists.
There aren't any real journalists these days, I'm afraid. They're just kind of... They're just not so...
Liz Truss was one of the leaders who led the party further to the right after David Cameron's centrist coalition. But is that what the party needs now? I tracked down some of the other former MPs here to see what they thought.
My name is Tobias Ellwood, fallen political star.
This place is crawling with former MPs.
It is, and it's really interesting. Some of us feel our time's not done yet. We've still got another lap to go. Therefore, we've actually got skin in the game. We're interested to know where the party is going to move next. So we would like to be part of that debate, make sure we don't go crazy super right, stay moderate centre ground, broad church. People like myself hopefully will be able to come back.
Well, tell me about that, because you are more of a centre-right politician. A lot of people here think the party should be turning to the further right at the moment. It should be trying to compete with reform on its own ground. How would you feel about the party if it did turn into that?
So that is the analysis that needs to be done. And my worry is, I said this from the very start, let's have a long campaign, first to understand who we are as a party. What do we stand for? Look back in our history, go back to Disraeli, Baldwin, Churchill, Thatcher, it was all centre-right. That's the area, the sweet spot in British politics. You vacate that, as we showed with Tony Blair, boy, they jumped straight in there. And to some degree, Keir Starmer did that as well. Lord Ashcroft just did some polling, and it asked that question. Why didn't you vote Conservative? Was it because they weren't right-wing enough? No, it was because we were incompetent. We just didn't look the part. We were arguing amongst ourselves and we weren't pursuing the right policies. So there's lots of homework to do. But the idea that somehow we jump on board with reform, that's going to provide a mathematical solution to this, is absolutely political illiteracy. It really is.
Could I just get you to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, Sir Liam Fox.
That's former Trade Secretary under Theresa May, Defence Secretary under David Cameron, and arch-Brexiteer Sir Liam Fox.
The Conservative Party needs to be a broad coalition. It needs to be able to appeal to a wide part of the political spectrum on the centre-right and right, and it can't choose which bits it wants to be in. And therefore the party needs to coalesce around ideas and principles rather than personalities. And I think that is changing and shaping the nature of the debate around the leadership.
Does it need to go further to the right?
Mrs Thatcher used to say we avoid external coalitions by maintaining internal coalitions, and the Conservative Party needs to be a broad enough coalition to be able to reflect the wide range of the voters who will support us. Whether you like it or not, Keir Starmer maintained his coalition better in the run-up to the election than we did. We fragmented. They won, we lost.
My name is Daniel Finkelstein. I'm a columnist on the Times newspaper.
How many of these have you been to now?
Oh, lots. I mean, I think the first Conservative conference I came to as a member would have been 1992.
Danny has also been a key advisor to successive Tory leaders, and he's been a regular fixture at the Tory party conference for years. He has a real sense of the mood of the party, and he's seen it undergoing transformations before, particularly after losing an election.
And the rest of it. So this is, in my view, the biggest crisis the Conservative Party has faced in its history. That's not just because of the size of the Conservative vote, 24%, only 121 seats, but also because it's facing this dilemma of losing votes to two different ends of the spectrum, so the Liberal Democrats and Labour on one hand, and to the Reform Party on the other, and losing half of its vote at the 2019 election to the 2024 election. So I think this is more serious even than the situation we faced in 1997, when it was sort of easier to think how to respond.
Going back to those periods, though, while it tried to work out which way it needed to go and how it needed to rebuild, it went through a lot of leaders. I think my first conference was 2003 with sort of Ian Duncan Smith being the quiet man who wanted to turn the volume up. But, it went through about 3 leaders before you got to a point where it could be electable again.
Yes.
Is there a sense that the beauty pageant that's taking place here, is it almost pointless? Does it matter who gets in?
No, look, one of the differences between the 1997 election and this one was not just that the Conservative Party did really, really badly, but actually Labour did quite badly too. So the Conservative Party lost something like 21% of the vote. And in England, the Labour Party only went up by 0.5% of the vote. And already you can see, with just a few points off, which you would expect from a governing party, the Labour Party is already under 30. So it's already in a position which traditionally would have been regarded as quite perilous for a mainstream political party. So the Conservative Party does not need to take more than a decade to get back into power. On the other hand, the situation it's in is, deeper and more serious in its own right. So it's complicated.
Is it bad for the party to be having a big leadership contest here, to see the divisions at the fore, to see people battling it out against each other, briefing against each other?
No, I'm in favour of that. I think an argument's a good thing at this point. I don't think it'll have a big effect on the next general election if the Conservative Party argues now. And it ought to debate the position that it's in. And actually, what's really interesting when you come here is there isn't one candidate who you think that person is miles ahead. Boris Johnson, when he was running for the leadership in 2019, it was pretty obvious he was going to win the leadership contest right from the outset. This one, it's not obvious, and I couldn't necessarily tell you who would win, so it'll be interesting to see. This is the third time the Conservative Party has chosen its leader with the conference interceding. Obviously, the conference isn't choosing the leader. The first time was when Harold Macmillan resigned. He was ill on the eve of the party conference. And lots of people thought that Lord Hailsham would be the next leader of the Conservative Party, or possibly Reggie Maudling. Came to the party conference. First, Lord Hailsham was seen to be sort of crass and pushing it too much. He had these badges with Q on them for Quentin, which is his first name. People thought was unimaginably crass.
They'd be horrified now.
He also, by the way, which is interesting from a modern standpoint, he was very much marked down for being seen to feed his baby in the lobby of the conference hotel, which was regarded as blatant electioneering and seeking popular press. And Alec Douglas-Hume, who became leader, really appealed to the conference. The membership really liked him, and that really helped him win the leadership. And of course, famously, in 2005, David Cameron came here, definitely a challenger, but certainly the underdog, made a speech at the conference and completely, within a period of 15 minutes, turned the conference round because people were seeking something new.
Danny, as somebody who has worked so closely within the party for many, many years, decades really, but also who has such a good understanding of the electorate, what do you think the party needs to be doing? Does it need to be moving to the right?
I'll be completely honest, I'm not sure that I've heard from any of the candidates the kind of serious analysis that the party needs in order to win. The things that David Cameron used to win the leadership, and the situation is different now, I understand that, but some of these rules still hold. To show optimism, a sense of the future, a really deep, truthful analysis of the depths of the problem for the Conservative Party in terms of its brand. Have any of the candidates yet shown that? I'm not sure they have. The Conservative Party needs to appeal at the same time to reform and Liberal Democrat defectors. I think that is actually possible. I don't think the gap ideologically between those people is that great. They both abandoned the Conservative Party for pretty similar reasons. They thought it was incompetent, it lacked integrity, it wasn't able to deliver the things that it believed in, and they therefore scattered in lots of different directions. It's difficult to gather them all together, but the advantage of this is that you're not probably looking to go in two different directions. I think if you re-establish yourself as a sensible mainstream party of government, get the right brains, and you are assiduous and serious enough about it, it can be done.
Dan, you started off saying this was the greatest crisis the party had been in your time. Having been at conference now, I mean, are you optimistic about the future of the party?
I don't yet see what I think I need to see in terms of a really attractive view of the future, trying to attract new constituencies. Even the talk that we've been having, I fall into the trap myself about who to win back, doesn't talk about the voters that party was already losing and the future of the country in terms of younger people and working people that were not voting Conservative. So I would say, if I was asked without being prompted about optimism, I would say that I was concerned about the centre-right. Actually, the biggest asset of the Conservative Party is that's where a lot of voters are, where most voters are, and where elections can be won. But it is persuading voters that the Conservative Party can represent and govern for the centre-right. That is a big task, and do I see things that make me super confident that the party grasps that and is in that place? No. But I'm not in despair about it, because I think it is quite open. They haven't committed themselves down a road that really means they go in the wrong direction. They just haven't chosen yet.
That was Danny, now Lord Finkelstein, and you heard earlier from Aubrey Allegretti, our chief political correspondent. You also heard from the former MPs Sir Liam Fox and Tobias Ellwood, Tory donor and pollster Lord Ashcroft, and you almost heard from Liz Truss. You can follow all of our coverage from the Tory leadership race at thetimes.com with a subscription. The producer today was Sam Chantarasak, the executive producer was Kate Ford, and sound design and theme music were by Mala Seto. If you enjoyed this, do drop us a line, tell us where you'd like to hear us reporting from next. Our email is thestory@thetimes.com. And thanks to all the listeners who came to say hello in Birmingham. We loved meeting you. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening.